In the heart of Europe, a tragedy unfolded that would mark the darkest chapter in its recent history. Srebrenica, a name etched into the world's memory, a symbol of the horrors that befell the Bosnian people in the mid-90s. But to truly understand the gravity of this event, we must first journey back to the roots of the conflict that set the stage for this atrocity. The Bosnian War, spanning from 1992 to 1995, was a brutal conflict that arose from the disintegration of Yugoslavia. It was a war marked by ethnic tensions, political strife, and territorial disputes, with Bosnia and Herzegovina at its epicenter. As Yugoslavia splintered into separate nations, each with its own ethnic and religious identity, the cultural melting pot that was Bosnia became a battleground. Three main groups, the Bosniaks, Serbs, and Croats, found themselves locked in a deadly power struggle. The Bosniaks, largely Muslim, wanted to preserve the independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Serbs, Orthodox Christians, sought to remain within a Serb-dominated Yugoslavia or form their own entity. The Croats, Roman Catholics, had their ambitions too. This was a powder keg waiting to explode, and explode it did. The United Nations stepped in, declaring safe areas in besieged Bosniak towns, one of which was Srebrenica. But these safe areas proved to be anything but safe. As the war raged on, the UN's peacekeeping efforts were stretched thin, and their inability to enforce these safe zones would have tragic consequences. Srebrenica, a small mining town in eastern Bosnia, found itself in the eye of this storm. As the conflict escalated, refugees from across the region sought sanctuary in the town, their numbers swelling from 9,000 to over 40,000. Srebrenica was a beacon of hope amidst the chaos, a sanctuary in a war-torn landscape. Yet, beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, a storm that would culminate in the horror of Srebrenica. To understand the Srebrenica Massacre, we must first dive into the tense political climate of the Balkans in the early 1990s. As the Cold War's frost began to thaw, the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, a federation of 6 republics, found itself on a precipice. This multi-ethnic state, once held together by the iron grip of Josip Broz Tito, began to unravel. Ethnic tensions simmered beneath the surface, and as communism's grip loosened, these tensions began to boil over. In 1991, Slovenia and Croatia declared independence. The Yugoslav People's Army, largely composed of Serbs, tried to keep the federation intact, but to no avail. A domino effect ensued. Bosnia and Herzegovina, with its complex ethnic tapestry of Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs, was next to step into the fray. A referendum for independence held in March 1992 saw an overwhelming majority of Bosniaks and Croats voting for secession, but it was largely boycotted by Bosnian Serbs. The stage was set for conflict. As Bosnia and Herzegovina declared independence, Bosnian Serb forces, backed by the Serbian government and the Yugoslav People's Army, responded with aggression. The Bosnian War had begun, and the world watched with bated breath as the heart of Europe once again became a battlefield. The United Nations, still reeling from the failure of its peacekeeping mission in Somalia, was thrust into the center of this brewing storm. In a bid to prevent widespread conflict, the UN declared Srebrenica and other Bosnian towns as safe areas in 1993. These safe areas were meant to be demilitarized zones free from armed attack or any other hostile act, a refuge for those fleeing the bloodshed. But the reality was far from the ideal. The UN Protection Force, under-resourced and underprepared, was tasked with the near-impossible job of maintaining these safe havens. Srebrenica, surrounded by Bosnian Serb forces, was a powder keg waiting to explode. International diplomacy made attempts to quell the rising tensions. The Vance-Owen peace plan in 1993 proposed a decentralized Bosnia divided into 10 provinces, but this was rejected by the Bosnian Serb Assembly. The Contact Group plan in 1994 proposed a union of 2 republics, one for the Bosniaks and Croats and the other for the Serbs, but this too was rejected by the Bosnian Serbs. The international community watched on, its diplomatic efforts falling on deaf ears. The UN's mandate to protect was hamstrung by a lack of resources and the reluctance of member states to commit troops to what was increasingly looking like a quagmire. As the world grappled with this complex geopolitical puzzle, the people of Srebrenica were caught in the middle. They lived in fear, their lives hanging in the balance, their city a pawn in a perilous game of power and control. The tension reached a boiling point in July 1995. The powder keg that was Srebrenica was about to explode, and the world was woefully unprepared for the horror that was to come. Despite the best efforts of the international community, the stage was set for a tragedy of unimaginable proportions. July 1995. Over 8,000 Bosniak men and boys would fall victim to the largest massacre in Europe since World War II. Let's travel back in time to those fateful days in Srebrenica, a small, tranquil town nestled in the hills of eastern Bosnia. The calm before the storm was shattered when Bosnian Serb forces, under the command of General Ratko Mladic, surrounded the town. The United Nations declared Srebrenica a safe area in 1993, but by July 1995, that promise of safety was about to be cruelly broken. As the city was besieged, fear and uncertainty hung heavy in the air. The Bosniak residents of Srebrenica, mainly women, children and elderly people, sought refuge at the UN base, while others fled into the surrounding woods, hoping to reach free territory. Their world was about to be irrevocably changed. On the 11th of July, the town fell. The UN Dutch-backed soldiers, vastly outnumbered and ill-equipped, could do little more than watch as the Bosnian Serb forces seized control. The promise of peace and safety, once assured by the United Nations, now lay in ruins. In the days that followed, a chillingly systematic process began. Bosniak men and boys separated from their families were rounded up under the pretense of interrogation for suspected war crimes. The reality, however, was far more sinister. They were taken to nearby fields, schools and warehouses, locations that would become the sites of mass execution. A survivor, Nedzad Avdic, recalls the harrowing experience. "We were lined up and shot. I was hit and fell into a mass grave, but I survived." The voices of survivors like Nedzad echo down the corridors of history, reminding us of the brutal reality of those days. While the men faced execution, the women, children and elderly were forcibly deported in a brutal act of ethnic cleansing. They were packed onto buses and trucks, their homes and lives in Srebrenica stripped away in a matter of hours. The screams, the tears, the desperate pleas for mercy, these are the haunting echoes of the Srebrenica Massacre. The scale and brutality of the massacre were staggering. Over 8,000 lives were extinguished in a matter of days. Each one of them had a name, a story, a family. They were fathers, sons, brothers, friends. Their absence left a gaping void in the heart of the Bosniak community, a wound that time would struggle to heal. The world was watching, yet it failed to act. The blue helmets of the United Nations, symbols of international peace and security, could not prevent the bloodshed. The Srebrenica massacre shook the foundations of the international community, prompting a wave of soul-searching and regret. Historian Marco Attila Hoare noted, "The massacre was the logical outcome of a policy that had support at the highest levels of the international community." This grim assessment underlines the tragic failure of diplomacy and peacekeeping efforts, leading to one of the darkest chapters in modern European history. The Srebrenica massacre was not just a tragedy, it was a crime against humanity, a genocide that obliterated lives, tore families apart, and left an indelible scar on the heart of Europe. It was a stark reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink when hatred and intolerance are allowed to flourish. In the aftermath of this horrific event, the world was left questioning, how could such an atrocity occur on European soil in the late 20th century? The echoes of this question still reverberate today, a sobering call to remember, to learn, and to ensure that such a tragedy is never repeated. The world watched in horror as the grim reality of the Srebrenica massacre was revealed. The serene Bosnian landscape was now scarred with the aftermath of a horror that defied comprehension. In the days that followed, the extent of the tragedy began to unfold. As the Serbian forces retreated, they left in their wake a chilling spectacle. The ground was littered with remnants of the massacre, a macabre testament to the scale of the atrocity. The discovery of mass graves in the vicinity of Srebrenica sent shockwaves through the international community. The scattered belongings of the victims, the hastily dug graves, the bullet-riddled clothing, each told a tale of the horror that had unfolded. Forensic experts and volunteers from around the world descended upon the region, painstakingly sifting through the evidence, seeking to piece together the gruesome puzzle. The world was forced to confront a grim reality. The worst atrocity on European soil since the Second World War had occurred under its watch. The international response was swift and resolute. The United Nations, the European Union, and other global powers, who had been criticized for their inaction during the massacre, now had to face the consequences of their indifference. In an unprecedented move, the Security Council of the United Nations established the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, or ICTY. This marked the first time since the Nuremberg and Tokyo trials that an international court was set up to prosecute individuals for serious violations of humanitarian law. The ICTY was tasked with bringing to justice those responsible for the crimes committed during the Yugoslav wars, including the Srebrenica Massacre. The proceedings were arduous and complex, with numerous challenges in gathering evidence, securing witnesses, and ensuring fair trials. Yet the tribunal was relentless in its pursuit of justice. The architects of the massacre were systematically identified, tried, and sentenced. Among them were Ratko Mladic, the Bosnian Serb general who orchestrated the massacre, and Radovan Karadzic, the political leader who gave the orders. Both were found guilty of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, and were sentenced to life imprisonment. The trial served as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked aggression and the importance of international law. They were a testament to the world's resolve to hold accountable those who perpetrate such atrocities. Yet despite the efforts of the ICTY, the path to justice was fraught with obstacles. Denial of the massacre by some factions in the Balkans, coupled with the slow pace of the trials, often left the victims' families in a state of despair. The search for missing persons continued, with many families still waiting for closure decades after the massacre. The Srebrenica massacre was a turning point in the way the world responded to war crimes. It led to significant changes in international policy, including the adoption of the responsibility to protect doctrine by the United Nations. This doctrine asserts the responsibility of the international community to intervene when a state fails to protect its population from mass atrocities. Yet the scars of Srebrenica remain. The memory of the massacre continues to shape the political and social landscape of the region. The quest for justice and reconciliation is ongoing, a testament to the resilience of the survivors and their unwavering pursuit of truth and accountability. The international community vowed never again. Yet the scars of Srebrenica remain. The lessons learned from this dark chapter in our recent history are a sobering reminder of our collective responsibility to prevent such atrocities. As we reflect on the aftermath of the Srebrenica massacre, let us not forget the cost of indifference, the importance of vigilance, and the enduring power of justice. More than 2 decades later, the memory of Srebrenica continues to shape both the survivors and the world. In the wake of the Srebrenica massacre, the survivors were left with an indelible scar, a haunting reminder of the horrors they had witnessed and the loved ones they had lost. Today, these survivors, scattered across the globe, carry with them the legacy of Srebrenica, a legacy of loss, resilience, and the unquenchable desire for justice. These survivors, mothers and fathers, siblings and children, have found strength in unity. They have formed organizations, such as the Mothers of Srebrenica, dedicated to preserving the memory of their lost loved ones, and to ensuring that the world does not forget the atrocities that unfolded in that small Bosnian town. The annual Srebrenica Potokari Memorial and Cemetery has become a beacon of remembrance, attracting thousands each year on the anniversary of the massacre. Here, in the heart of Bosnia, a sea of white marble gravestones stretches out, each one a stark reminder of a life cut short, a dream unfulfilled, a family torn apart. But remembrance is not confined to Bosnia alone. Across the globe, in cities from London to New York, memorials have been erected in honor of the victims of Srebrenica. These monuments serve as a solemn reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink when intolerance and hatred are allowed to fester. Yet, amid the sorrow and the pain, there is a glimmer of hope. The legacy of Srebrenica has also spurred a global movement for peace and reconciliation. Organizations such as the Srebrenica Peace March and the International Commission on Missing Persons have emerged from the ashes of the massacre, championing the cause of peace and justice and providing a platform for survivors to share their stories. In classrooms around the world, the story of Srebrenica has become a stark lesson in the perils of hatred and division. Teachers and students alike grapple with the harsh realities of the massacre, using it as a springboard for discussions on human rights, tolerance, and the importance of standing up against injustice. Despite the immense pain and loss, the survivors of Srebrenica have shown remarkable resilience and an unwavering commitment to ensuring that such atrocities are never repeated. Their stories continue to inspire and challenge us, serving as a stark reminder of the human capacity for both evil and extraordinary resilience. As we delve into the legacy and remembrance of the Srebrenica Massacre, we are reminded of the power of memory. Memory, with its ability to evoke the most painful of experiences, but also to inspire resilience and a commitment to justice. Memory, with its capacity to foster empathy, understanding, and ultimately, peace. The legacy of Srebrenica, therefore, is not just one of loss and sorrow, but also of resilience and hope. It is a legacy that challenges us to confront the darkness of our past, to learn from it, and to strive for a future where such atrocities are relegated to the annals of history. So as we remember Srebrenica, let us also remember the lessons it has taught us. Let us remember the importance of standing up against intolerance and hatred, of fostering understanding and empathy, and of striving for peace and justice. Let us remember the victims, their families, and the survivors who continue to carry the weight of this tragedy. Let us honor their resilience, their courage, and their unwavering commitment to justice. And as we remember the victims of Srebrenica, let us also remember our responsibility to promote peace and understanding in our own communities. For it is only through remembering, understanding, and acting that we can hope to prevent such atrocities from happening again.